wasn't just a big night of fight. It was a big night of memorable moments. Conor McGregor with us here in Denver, Colorado. Good left hand from Rockhold. Right hand right back from Mike Perry.
Can I get a face-off with Conor McGregor, man?
It's an incredible setup here, incredible matchmaking, incredible storytelling. Oh, you had to come here. All these fighters that step in here are warriors, and all have my respect. And I'm into this game, yeah. We'll be into this, yeah.
And we are live here in the Maverick Center, here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Folks, what a night. It is going to be historic indeed for BKFC 56.
Whoever's the king of violence right here, this is going to be a great fight.
Perry on the top. Right hand from Mike Perry. Double jab.
Who's the king of violence? I am!
Combat fighting in its purest form, bare knuckle fighting in the city of angels.
80 seconds remaining.
We've got the biggest announcement in the BKFC history we're about to make, so let's make that announcement.
What's up, Knucklemania? The notorious Conor McGregor here. Ladies and gentlemen, the huge announcement that I have for you today. Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
He's now an owner of BKFC with us, and we're going to take this motherfucking thing all the way to the...
When the games are live, so are we. Welcome to another edition of InGame Live Prime Time right here on the grid. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and with me is my sportsbook consigliere, Dave Sharapan, for the next hour. What's going on, man? We got a couple of MLB games. We've got NFL preseason to discuss, and we are almost on the precipice of football season, so I'm sure we may talk a future or two. What's going on, my friend?
It's always good to see you. And I got to tell you, I don't know if you have any Italian blood in you, but when you say it every time, my consigliere, it's so good. Gets me fired up. It gets the people fired up. So, listen, it's a light night, baseball-wise. But we got some things planned. The boys in the back put together some things. Yeah. There's a game that hasn't started yet. It's Twins-Rangers, and I don't know what to do with this game, Dana. I really don't. I looked at it, and I said, please tell me that, Mr. Center Fielder, leadoff hitter, something comes up with some kind of play for this.
Yeah, I got something for you, and you are right. This game is about to have their first pitch in Texas with the Minnesota Twins coming over there. So what I am on is the Minnesota Twins starting pitcher, Bailey Ober. I am on his strikeout prop. I'm going over 5.5 strikeouts. Let me tell you something. He's had 7 or more strikeouts in his last 3 games, including 11, one of those starts, okay? He's also 137 strikeouts in 128 innings, Dave. So that kind of more than a strikeout per inning. That's always something we're looking for here. And he's got at least 6 innings in his last 9 starts. So to me, it's always like, will he be out there long enough to do that? Last time we talked, I believe it was Dylan Cease coming off the no-hitter, if you remember. Yep. And I didn't think he'd be out there long enough. And he went under, right? I think we were also talking Clayton Kershaw. And would they be stretched out enough? So will they be out there long enough is always a thing. That's why I like that Ober has gone at least 6 innings in his last 9 starts. He's had 7 or more strikeouts. So 5.5 is where I'm going in a, truth be told, light night. But I had to give the people something here before we go live.
Always. And again, these K props are as much the Ks as they are the innings pitched.
Yes.
You got to get a guy who's, the days of going, 5 innings and getting 10 Ks or 11 Ks is tough. So they're kind of correlated. Let's get us into 6 if we got to get over that number. I like it. I can't believe it's been that long since we did the show together. Cease, no-hitter, might have been the turn for the Padres to just keep charging and doing what they're doing. The NL West has gotten super interesting. The Diamondbacks are right there. everything's happening out west.
Yeah.
I've been wondering, like the Phillies are rolling tonight, and I got the Philly stuff on because they got a Schwarbaum last night that might have turned their little thing around, right? 9-0 tonight, cruising.
That's true. Yeah, they're up 9-1 right now on Washington.
Okay.
Live total 14.5 in that game. Only the top of the fifth. 10 runs on the board already. Can there be 5 more, or do the Philadelphia Phillies kind of ease up on this one? You know, you taught me once, when we have a blowout like this, we get kind of the B and C level relievers. We do not get the A relievers with an 8-run gap. So maybe there is the propensity to go against that soft underbelly. 14.5 is the total there. In the other game that's going on in the AL East, the Baltimore Orioles are up 3-1 at home in the top of the 6th against the Bo Sox. In this one, listen, it's a 2-run gap. You can get 5-1 for the Red Sox to come on back. You can right now, with the Red Sox down by 2, get the Red Sox plus 2.5 runs. I know you always like that one. And then a live total of 6.5. You got it. I know all the action's happening out west, but you know I'm an East Coast guy as well. So what are your thoughts about Boston and Baltimore, my friend?
Baltimore went through a little bit of a lull here, right? Like you're looking to play against them normally, but man, the Red Sox went bad. So when I looked at this before the game, it was like, this is probably another under. I feel like a broken record, Dane. Under. You look at the card on the MLB in the morning and you go, that's an under, that's an under, that's it. Okay, maybe that one could go over. But my first thought on this one was under. And sidewise, it would only be Baltimore, but I didn't feel good about this one at all before the game. I was like, nah, maybe we'll just kind of watch and jump in game. And I was going to ask you about the football game. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on with that football game. Nothing is what's going on with that football game, right?
And that's why, to be quite honest, Dave, one of the things I love to do, especially early in the preseason, you talk about a broken record saying under in MLB. I'm a broken record talking about unders in the preseason here, week 1 and week 2. Last week, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe off the top of my head, unders went 12-4 in week 1 of the preseason. And here's why. And I bet some of them, okay? So I know it. And here's my kind of blueprint. You tell me if I'm crazy, if I'm sharp or square. I think the key of it is, you know, the coaches out there, they're not implementing their full game plan. They're not showing anything, right? We're not getting any double A gap blitzes. We're not getting any corner blitzes. We're not disguising coverages, right? Teams are just sitting in their 4-3, their 3-4, whatever it is, and they're kind of playing straight up. Also, offensively, don't get me wrong. These guys that are trying to crack the 53-man roster, they are giving it their all. They're trying to impress, right? They're playing hard. I'm not taking anything away from them. The problem is these coaches are just calling, you know, run up the middle, run off tackle. They're not necessarily going to show anything. And that kind of base vanilla aspect of it all, plus no one's managing the game. No one's running a 4-minute offense or anything like that. They're happy to get in, hop out, get out of Dodge, be healthy, and not do anything too crazy. So I'm going under.
It is. We're both old enough to remember, me older than you, but we're both old enough to remember there was a script/playbook for the preseason. Game 1, get everybody out there, get some pad times and just whatever. And then
week 3, though,
second
that
one,
third game, though.
Right. The third game was the actual dress rehearsal. And then the fourth game was a complete circus music week. But now 3 preseason games, the risk of injury is so much higher. We already saw what happened in Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy done, out, whatever. So, you know, Sam Darnold's going to be the starter without a safety net. Good luck, Minnesota fans. But you get a game like last week with the Eagles and the Ravens in the preseason. They didn't show nothing. These two teams practice together. The practicing together thing creates a little bit of like familiarity where I don't want to see you no more. I don't want to show you nothing no more.
Yes.
And if we play again, you ain't going to know nothing because I ain't giving you nothing. So they're dull, boring games. And that screams under. So that there's no other way to look at this. I mean, trying to pick the sides of these things, it's dog or nothing most times.
I just take the plus money. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
I just took last week, I took the Jets at plus 140 on the money line. I had the Rams at plus 230 on the money line. There's no reason to take a favorite. I think you make a great point with the joint practices. That's the other thing that's been the evolution of this, right? Because you're worried about injuries in the preseason, but you still want your guys to get kind of as close to live reps as possible, right, Dave? And so these joint practices have been the solution where they can kind of go after each other a little bit, but still in a somewhat controlled environment where they're not going to get hurt, right? And that's where, you know, your QB1s, that's where they're getting their work in. That's how they're preparing against something that they haven't seen before, that are not dudes in their same colored jerseys, right? That's how they're, quote unquote, getting their work in. And that's why we don't see some of these studs in the preseason. But speaking of which, we're talking about unders. New England has just scored a touchdown. Drake May on a read option rolls out to the right side and scores. The New England Patriots are up 10-3 inside the 2-minute warning in the second quarter. The live total in this game is 30.5. That is slightly down from where we were. And New England is now live a 6.5-point favorite. You can come on back. If you like betting the dog, Dave, you can come on back at the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 350. It is a one possession game, over 3-1 odds. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our first commercial break here on InGame Live Primetime. When we come back, it's going to be around halftime in that game. So we are going to reset the deck there, and we'll talk about these teams, the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots. What are their fortunes? Are there any leans? Are there any ways to play these two teams that are getting it going opening week 2 of the NFL preseason? I'll do that with my consigliere when we come back here on InGame Live Primetime.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's like it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked a field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850, and then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, Primetime, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back InGame Live, prime time here on a Thursday night. Dane Martinez and Dave Sharapan. Looking real quick again at Major League Baseball. Twins and Rangers have gotten going. We're scoreless in the first inning. I told you about the Bailey Ober prop. I like that strikeout prop in that one. Phillies all over the Washington Nationals at home 9-1. If there's anything that changes there, we'll let you know. And Baltimore has tacked on a little bit at home. They're now up 4-1 against the Bo Sox. That game in the bottom of the 6th. You said you like the under. I got to tell you the truth, Dave. I took a live over in this game, live over 6.5. So I'm feeling decent about that one. You know what I always do. I saw Nick Pivetta at like 70 pitches through 4 innings. So I was on that one. I think Eflin was also heavily worked as well. So I do have an eye to that. But we were talking about the NFL game with the Patriots and the Eagles. Now, what do you do in this one? I mean, New England is up by 7, but we know come the second half, we're going to get a ton of these, second, third, fourth stringers. And I believe it's not the players, it's the coaching, right? We're dry, we're vanilla. We're going to be just running the ball. We're going to be milking the play clock. We're not going to really be putting anything dynamic out there in the second half. When you were in the risk room, how do you handle the first half versus the second half of a preseason game, right? Like usually I know we think there's, less points or more points. Like how do you treat it knowing that there's going to be this influx of guys that are going to be selling used cars in about 2 weeks?
It's one of those ones where you're cautiously, like the debate in the room is how much do you slide it down if you're going to shade it to the under, or how much do you move it to the over? So 10-3, the game closed, 36? So the halftime number would be
6.5, I think, yeah.
Right. Okay, so the halftime number, 17.5? If there's no more scoring. Now, you start to make these numbers right now. I'm looking at my clock here. It says we got just under a minute left.
Yeah.
So you make a number, and then something crazy happens right before the half, and all your work is done. You have to change and adjust on the fly. But if it goes into the final, I don't think that we're going to get that
here. I don't think we're going to get that here. Philly is facing a 4th and 4 kind of around midfield. They'll probably wind up punting it, and then New England will get the ball back with inside of a minute left to go. And I don't think, again, they're not going to try to do anything, right? And this is not the regular season where they're going to rush to try to get into field goal range again. I don't think that's what they do, unless, of course, they want to try out the 2-minute offense. But that's not what I'm thinking. Philly's lining up to punt here kind of around midfield, so I'll let you know. But I say that to mean I think it's a fair assumption that it will be 10-3 going into the locker rooms, Dave.
So you the first thing you do is see who gets the ball. You have to know who's starting with the ball in the second half, and you go, okay, what are the chances of them getting any points? What are the chances of them getting a touchdown? What are the chances of them going 3 and out and punting, which would then swing the team that gets the ball into almost a favorite role if they're down. If it's Philly, like they're going to tie the game quickly. So you might shave a point or two off the side, and you might – it doesn't really affect the total. The totals, the formulas are like in your head. They're so easy once you do it a long time. 17, 20, that's the number of points in the second half. So if the in-game totals right now is 30 or 30.5, the halftime total is 17. So, I mean, the in-game stuff does it for you. You can't even vary much off of it. If like we were running the D&D book, which is not out of the realm of possibility someday. If we do a day-to-day. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. Just put that in the back burner for the kids.
Sounds good.
I mean, you got little
Sounds
kids.
good.
We might do that someday. We might use 18.5. You can't vary too much. If you tell me, Dave, they're going to come out and score, or Drake May's going to play the whole second half. Like if you know that,
right?
By you, my meaning people watching us on the show, like you have an advantage because a lot of times the guys in the room are guessing as much as everybody else at home. So the information war is real in a preseason.
So I got to tell you, we are at halftime. It is 10-3 New England. The live total in this game is assuming slightly less than what you are talking about, Dave, because I'm staring at 28.5. And to be quite honest, it's been toggling back and forth between 27.5 and 28.5, which is a little odd to me because the 27.5 represents the 2 touchdowns, right? That's 14 more points. So for me, it's almost like a dead number, the difference between 27.5 and 28.5 at this point with 13 on the board. They're going back and forth between, will there be, 15 or 16 more points? Because if you're going to go over 27.5 with a 10-3 score, aren't you going to go over 28.5 as well? But that's what I'm staring at right now. 28.5 plus 390 for the Eagles to come back on the money line and down by a touchdown. The live spread is 6.5.
You know the difference, though, in the preseason and why that number, you're right, in the regular season. They go for 2 so they don't have ties, right?
That's right.
So
there's no overtime anymore, Dave. There's no overtime anymore in the NFL
In the
preseason.
Yeah.
Right. So,
well, I think that's the time that you see it now. They work on the twos more. There's more
I see.
2-point conversions in the second half, right? So just a
That could
little
be it.
tweak that I think some odds makers would take into account. Have you figured out the kickoff rule yet? How do you think the kickoff rule is going to impact the NFL?
So-
I really don't. No.
So I actually think it's going to have a big impact, Dave. And here's why. I laugh about it, and I feel bad saying it this way. But I think there will be some teams and some special team coaches that have figured it out. You're like, can you figure it out? I think there's going to be some teams and some special team coaches that have plays, that have figured it out, that have a strategy with it. And there are going to be some people that are just flying blind. Like sometimes the refs didn't even know the rules, if you saw that last week. And so there is a lot of things to figure out. There's going to be an element of strategy that some teams are going to figure out sooner than others. Here's what I'll say, Dave. At some point, you are going to be on this network after like a random week 5 game, and you are going to be lambasting a team that did the wrong thing as per these kickoff rules. Should have done something, did something else, allowed the team to get the ball at the 40, and then they kick the game-winning field goal. Or you're going to see a team that's come out with like a good zone running play that they're basically running off of the kickoff or something like that to actually be able to break some. There are going to be some teams, some good run-heavy, run-focused, run-scheme teams, San Francisco, Baltimore, teams like that I think are going to be able to figure something out and actually have some really good kickoff plays, and I think it could be a differentiator. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about these teams, the Eagles and the Patriots, and their season futures when we come back here on InGame Live. Bye.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked a field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
But if you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in-game live, prime time. Dane and Dave with you on a Thursday night. We got 3 games in Major League Baseball. Bailey Ober, who I had this K-prop, and I told you he went 6 innings in his last 9 starts. Well, he's given up 1 run in the first inning, and the bases are loaded for the Texas Rangers. So I hope he can get out of it, maybe get a ground ball here, because I need him to probably go at least 6 innings to get to that strikeout prop. But I digress. We were talking about the Eagles and the Patriots at halftime. It's 10-3 Pats. And Dave, I've got a question for you, because I know your experience. I value your opinion and your experience. When I see the New England Patriots this year, I'll tell you, I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in football, Dave. Okay? I really do. I think their record is going to be piss poor. I think their offense is going to be bad. I think Drake May might not play all season. And here's the thing, okay? You see it right now. You see their schedule. Their win total is 5.5. Okay, Dave? I think only the Carolina Panthers, maybe the Giants, have win totals at that level. Now, here is the deal. I've also seen the spreads for every single NFL game of the season. You can already bet it. And here's what I know. I know the New England Patriots are favored in 0 games this season. Literally, they are dogs in every single game this season, including their home division games, including all that, right? So for them to go over this win total, Dave, they have to have 6 upset victories, right? And so I can't understand it. I would bet the under. My question for you and your experience, though, it's a long setup to ask you, what is the lowest you can hang a win total? Like, if you had a team that, like, I know we have props about, would a team go winless? The Detroit Lions, will they go 0-16, 0-17? Like, with good faith, how low could you actually hang a win total? Because anything can happen in the NFL, right? Like, you can't hang 2.5 as a win total. Can you?
So the year that Miami lost 62-7 or something to the Ravens in the first game of the season, was the first year that I insisted we do this. I said, we're putting up adjusted season win totals because we did such a good job with the numbers. We took double the limit. So instead of a dime, we took 2, and then we opened them up sooner, and we were taking as much as 5 dimes on the season win totals because we had good numbers. We took our time and did it right. So we put up 1.5.
Really?
On a season win total. Yes, an adjusted season win total. Because everybody was talking about they're not going to win a game. They're going to go winless. And I said, we can't put up 2 because they're going to bet us under. A lot. And I don't want to hear any crap because the original season win total was 5 or 5.5. With juice under, we used 5.
Sure.
I'm good. I was good with the push. Whenever 16 games, totals with push and the season wins, that's fine. We'll give the money back. We held it for 6 months. It's okay. We put up 1.5, Daner. We didn't take a single bet on the over.
Really?
And they lost the next game. So everybody talked.
Really?
For at least 2 weeks and said how they got us. And how they got us. And
then they finished 3-13, right?
They got 5. They got 5
there you
wins.
Go.
It was, I kept saying our number was good the first time. We're sticking with it. We turned a non-real starter decision-wise into a gigantic decision, and all we needed was over 1.5. People overreact. The lowest total we ever put up in my life was 4. I don't think you can put up below 4.
Okay.
Even though, like you just said, the Patriots not being favored in 1 game is
They're
absurd.
dogs in all 17 games.
How is that possible?
Right? Because they're that much worse than their division, right? You would usually think at least 1 home division game, maybe they'd be a 1.5 point favorite. Like, there are other bad teams in the NFL, but you can find like 1 game or when 1 bad team makes the cross-country trip to your place, right? You could find 1 game. But no, they are dogs in all 17 games. I believe the Carolina Panthers might be as well, and they have a comparable win total. And I get it. I think they're going to be blunt guts trash, but I just knew that no good, respecting, faithful man like yourself could hang a number that low just because it's not good practice.
No, you can't. Injuries, things might develop.
You never know.
In the NFL, it feels like any day one team can beat another team. One game, maybe not 5.
Absolutely.
I like under.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. And listen, if the Patriots upset 6 teams and go over, I tip my cap to Gerard Mayo, right? We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit of college football after this with our guy Colby Dant on IPL.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked a field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in, everybody. In-game live, prime time rolls on when the games are live. So are we right here on the grid. Spitting statistician Dane Martinez, Mike Consigliere, Dave Sharapan, and we are overjoyed right now to bring in our guy Colby Dant, representing the SGP crew, and he's going to come and talk a little bit about some college football, which, don't look now, is really and truly on the horizon. Literally less than 2 weeks than this like week 0 games. So let's get into it now with Colby. The first question I have for you, man, is this: like, I see some conference futures, and it just looks weird to me. You know what I mean? Like, Utah is the favorite in the Big 12, you know? The Oregon Ducks are the second choice in the Big 10. It's just really, really weird. So at a zoomed out level, Colby, how do you kind of handicap some of this when there's just so much unfamiliarity across the nation this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, that's been a challenge. I think the bigger challenge is the fact that these conferences are so gigantic, and a lot of the conferences haven't released their tiebreakers. So, like, you're trying to forecast the championship game, and you're like, wait, will it be, best conference record? Will it be most, top 25? Some of them, like, we saw the Mountain West last season ignore the head-to-head matchup because San Jose State had beaten UNLV. So, I'm just kind of waiting for all these conferences to release these, but, they don't even have to release them until by November. So that's been a struggle. But the conference realignment, I also am fascinated by all the realignment. I mean, I'm a traditionalist, so I kind of wish we had the Pac-12 still, but should be an exciting football season. I'm all on board with the 12-team playoff, and I think it's going to really give steroids to the sport.
Without a doubt. one, it's good to see you. Two, we'll get to where your hat is later because you always have a hat on too, and I feel it's very at home when someone else wears a hat on the show. So I feel a little bit out on an island, but also out on an island is in the Big Ten. I'm a Big Ten guy. Are they going to get 4 teams in the playoff? I mean, the numbers 3.5 in a lot of books. Ohio State's going to get in. I've accepted that. Oregon's going to get in. I've accepted that. And then it's Penn State, Michigan, USC. A lot of talk of Iowa having a real easy schedule and then being unable to keep them out at 10-2 or 11-1. Colby, please tell me. Big Ten, 3, maybe 4 teams, including the Nittany Lions. Maybe? Yes? No?
Well, certainly, I think certainly 3, and it's probable for 4. I don't know about Penn State though. I like Iowa's chances better than Penn State. I think Iowa. They have 7 guys on the defensive side of the ball that are going to be super seniors. So this is going to be his best defensive team I think he's ever had. And then, he got rid of his son at the offensive coordinator spot. Tim Lester comes in. I'm not saying it's going to be the most exciting offense, but I do think it'll be improved. They also get healthier. Last season, Luke Lachey, who will be in the NFL at the tight end spot, it was out for the year. And obviously Cade McNamara was out for the year. And this Ohio State transfer out wide out, that the offense actually, if you look at it, you're like, whoa, you can kind of convince yourself to them scoring about, 30 points a game or something. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the schedule, they're only dogs in Columbus, in my eyes. And okay, even if they sputter against another team, 10-2 will probably get you into the playoffs. And I kind of think this is his best roster he's had in at least some time since Drew Tate, what was 10, 12 years ago.
Yep.
So I want to ask you over about the ACC, Colby, because for me, that's a conference where there hasn't been as much changing, right? A lot of these participants are still the same. You got the Seminoles up top, Clemson, also Miami. That's the team I want to ask you about because when I looked at their schedule, I actually thought it smiled on Miami. They, I think, do not have either Florida State or Clemson on their schedule. Talk to me about the ACC and what you expect to be up at the top. And just like Dave asked, how many teams from this ACC conference do you think get into the 12?
I think potentially 2. Now, it's either going to be 1 or 2. It's not going to be 3. But Miami is one where, you look on paper and it's like, where's the flaw? They could win the national championship if everything hits. I've taken that flyer before. And I've learned that it's like until I see it, I'm just not going to buy it. Their home advantage is horrible. In college sports, home advantage means so much. Whenever they moved away from the Orange Bowl and went to that stadium like 45 minutes away where the Dolphins play, Hard Rock, it's literally been like a home field for other teams. Like the Louisville game last year, Louisville had that crowd. So I think that really matters. And then the fact Mario Cristobal, I feel like in big games, he still needs to prove it to me. So I lean under with Miami. I know they spent, arguably the most amount of money this offseason building that roster, bringing in Cam Ward and Dane Martinez and Sam Brown and everything. But I do think, they got to show me before I buy in. I would take Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, and even some of the thing about the ACC to me is like there's a bunch of teams with way easier schedules than Clemson and Florida State, like NC State, Louisville, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, even Syracuse. They have a great path to the ACC championship. So I don't know that they thought this through. Like this, they built this 12-team model. They didn't know it was going to get condensed to 4. And now you have these 17, 18-team conferences where I don't know what they're going to do with these tiebreakers because I feel like it's bound to happen because you're only going to have 8 conference games in the ACC or the SEC, and you have this gigantic conference.
Craziness. The Big 12, I just was on Game Time Decisions with Kevin, and he had the number there at 1.5 of the Big 12 as far as teams getting in, but the under was juiced heavily. Look at the Big 12. There's only one team getting in, the conference champ, right? There's not really a path or room for anybody other than, I would say, Utah or Kansas State. Small outside shot Oklahoma State, but there's no way two teams from this conference are getting in, is there?
I would think that you would either have to have Utah or Kansas State pretty much run the table, or be 11-1 and lose in the Big 12 championship game. But I fully expect them to be playing a team. I have Utah playing UCF in my Big 12 championship. Ooh. And to me, if Utah was to get upset by UCF, the committee would then have to have their, they would sit there and say, well, wait, do we put in a 11-2 Utah Utes team, or do we put in, it presents quite the problem. You got to know what every other school's, records are, but I would say they're only going to get one in.
All right, and then we got to go to the SEC, the king, right? Like, you're talking about only one or two teams in some conferences. I think there's going to be more in the SEC. How do you cap that conference?
Yeah, this is the one that I think is one of the more fascinating to see this season. And I would say I'm looking at, 4-5 teams in for sure. I think the minimum would be 4 for the SEC this year. It's not like the Big Ten. The Big Ten has more dead weight to me. And I say this as someone that I'd prefer the Big Ten to be better than the SEC if you really asked me. But it's just the reality. SEC's, that adding Oklahoma and Texas to an already loaded conference, it's going to make it, so I think for sure 4 SEC teams are going to be in this 12-team playoff.
First game of the year is next week, a week from Saturday. It's Florida State, Georgia Tech, and it's week 0. I don't know what to call it. I don't like the week 0 moniker, but it's the first game. Any side total here you want to discuss before we get you out of here?
Yeah, I like Georgia Tech in the points. It's coming down, though. This thing was at 13 like 4 or 5 days ago. So I still like it, though. To me, like anything above 10, I think is worth taking on the Yellow Jackets. DJU's learning his 3rd offense in 3 years. And even with that, I thought he underperformed at Oregon State, last season. Georgia Tech's got a high-powered offense. Haynes King can run the ball. It's in Dublin. Who knows who's partying the night before? It's Ireland. So I like the Yellow Jackets and the points.
All right, fair enough. Thanks a lot for stopping by with us, Colby. We'll have you back here sometime soon when we're going to have to figure out, right? 3-loss teams, 2-loss teams, where they draw the line. And we'll continue to talk about it all college football season. We'll be back with more InGame Live Prime Time after this.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked a field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, Prime Time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in-game live prime time here on the grid. Dane Martinez and the consigliere Dave Sharapan. We're 2-2 Twins and Rangers. Phillies are continuing to crush the Nationals in the city of brotherly love. Dave is rocking the Philadelphia Phillies gear as well, so he's happy about that. And the Orioles continue to lead in Camden Yards in an AL East matchup against the Bo Sox. That game now 5-1 in the top of the eighth. I told you, Dave, I have an eye to that one because I'm over 6.5 live. We've got 6 on the board right now in the top of the eighth. But we are in the third quarter of the football game here, and it is still 10-3 New England, okay? Philadelphia, I do believe, is lining up either for a field goal or something. No, they're going to go for it, it looks like here. So we'll see what happens there, but it is a touchdown game. We talked a little bit about the Patriots, right, earlier. I want to talk about the Eagles, who have better fortunes than the New England Patriots. They are currently the favorites to win the NFC East. They, I believe, are tied for the second choice in the NFC behind only the San Francisco 49ers. They make some moves in the offseason, right? They bring in, most notably, Saquon Barkley into that lineup. And I got to tell you something. You know, Dave, you know me as the fantasy guy, right? I am all over Saquon Barkley this year. Here's the stat for you. Let me tell you, okay? Last year, Saquon Barkley was hit behind the line of scrimmage on 46% of his runs. That is the highest number in the NFL because of that Giants offensive line. By contrast, DeAndre Swift in Philadelphia last year was hit behind the line of scrimmage on 24% of his runs, the third lowest rate in the NFL. So you give me Saquon Barkley with that offensive line. He was with the Giants. Every defensive coordinator had Saquon as job number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, bringing safeties down into the box. You can't do that with him in Philadelphia because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith will absolutely crush you then if you do that. I think this is a match made in heaven. I think Saquon is going to have CMC-like additives to this Philadelphia offense. I truly believe that, and I saw that his rushing prop for the season was set at 1,500. He had 980 yards last year, Dave, in 13 games with that offensive line and being the focus. To me, Saquon Barkley is being undervalued this year. He is going to be huge for the Philadelphia offense. I think this team wins the NFC East in a runaway. What do you think about Philadelphia this year?
Well, by process of elimination, I also have them winning the division. I just don't know how many games they're going to win. And I don't know, are you confident in Saquon's health? Because when healthy, I think what you're saying is right, and he's going to get the ball. But if we're playing like not conservation or preservation mode, Eagles get a big lead, get on the sideline, Saquon, take those top pads off, stay ready, but we're good. We're up 21. We don't need you in a game. He might have some games where it's not what he normally would. But I mean, you're a fantasy guy. I love talking to you about the individual stuff like this because you're still doing fantasy leagues. You're still looking when guys get drafted. Is there a running back in the NFC other than CMC that is up? You're talking levels like this?
Yeah, there is. Bijan Robinson, exactly. Bijan Robinson is actually going ahead of Saquon in fantasy drafts right now. He's going as running back 2 or 3. CMC is obviously the first pick overall. But the other thing here with Saquon, and people have always countered me with this, is, okay, but there's Jalen Hurts there. I got to tell you something. I actually believe that they are going to run Jalen Hurts less this year purposely. I think Saquon Barkley is there to save Philadelphia from Jalen Hurts so that he can be healthy. I don't think they're going to be doing as many tush pushes this year. You have your Hall of Fame center no longer there in Jason Kelce, and you saw that Hurts was banged up towards the end of last year. They also, in DeAndre Swift, I told you about this, he's just not a great goal line back. Now, when you have Saquon Barkley that you can hand the ball to, I don't think they need to risk Jalen Hurts as much with the tush push. So I actually think, similar to how Derrick Henry in Baltimore saves Lamar Jackson from having to do as much, I think Saquon Barkley in Philly saves them from having to use Jalen Hurts as much. But the answer to your question would be Bijan Robinson, and that's about it. Some people liked the Lions running back, the second-year guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's now even dealing with a hamstring, and I personally was not on him. I do think Saquon is going to be like it's going to be a huge difference in that Philadelphia offense. What's the ceiling for this Philadelphia team, in your opinion? Can they go like NFC Championship game, Super Bowl?
Well, I think so. We had Donnie Rightside on today on BVB, and he was pretty candid about the expectations being tempered based on the way that the Eagles finished the season last year. Like
Right.
total meltdown. It was rolling, everything was going good. It was high. We're going to go to the NFC Championship, and then boom, everything went south. So I think there's cautious optimism. I still think, I mean, when you look at this schedule and you go through it a little bit, it's not an easy schedule. And it may start out really good, but it's going to get a little murky in the middle. And I want to say the ceiling is 12 wins, but it might only be 11. It's going to be good enough, I think, to make the playoffs. Yes, win a division, yes. As far as NFC Championship, they're going to have to go win a game or two on the road, and that's not easy to do. If they're running the ball, it is.
Right.
Do you like Hurts then passing yards over? Like, is he gonna run less? Because the boys got a great graphic here with the Hurts passing number.
Yeah.
Your first thought when you see that, because mine is under when I see that number, but you're kind of making me think like maybe they'll do more of those read, runs, react, and pull back and throw. Especially if Saquon's having success early, they bring people up a little more deeper
That's
pass.
true.
I don't know.
Listen, I think we could get some big shots downfield to A.J. Brown. We also right now have these exact Philadelphia Eagles. They went for it on 4th and 1, and I think they just barely got it. But the weird part to me is, you're not going to believe this, Dave, they ran the chain gang out to measure for the first down. I thought we were doing this all digitally this season. So that's interesting to me. When we come back, I've only got like 5 minutes left with my consigliere. I have to ask him about a very specific Week 2 preseason matchup. I believe something coaches are saying in the middle of August. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not. I'm going to ask my consigliere if I should believe it and if I should make a play on it when we come back on IGL.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked a field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, PrimeTime, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in here, in-game live, prime time rolls on. My time with my consigliere is almost up, so I've got to ask him one of those "Am I crazy?" questions as it relates to this week of the preseason. We've got the Vegas Raiders against the Dallas Cowboys this week. The coach speak that I believe is Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce is saying that he is going to make his decision on who the starting quarterback will be right after this game, where we don't know if it's going to be Gardner Minshew or AOC, right? And here's my thing. I personally believe Minshew is the better player. I think he's going to be the starter, but that's not the key right now. What I know is both of these NFL caliber quarterbacks are going to be playing with something to prove, with actually trying to impress their head coach who is about to make a decision. So to me, I actually want to be on the Las Vegas side on this one because I've got two quarterbacks. Most of the game is going to be with a quarterback, not that's going to be, like I say, selling used cars in 3 weeks, but who's legitimately competing to be QB1. So I looked, and, you know, the books are obviously on this, and Las Vegas is a 7-point favorite. You don't usually see full touchdown favorites in the preseason, but I kind of still want to bet Vegas because I do believe these quarterbacks are trying to impress. Now, Dave, am I crazy?
You're absolutely not crazy. You're paying attention. And that's exactly what I think people are doing that already bet anything under 7. It's been the talk around town.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. The training camp battle for the quarterback position. And it's funny because I think there's a couple guys I respect and know. We're talking about this last weekend at the book. If it's AOC, the ceiling's higher, I think.
Okay.
If it's Gardner Minshew, you know it's more of a known commodity and you know what you're going to get. So to say out loud to everybody that both guys are going to play and we're going to decide, it might have been one of them local moves, like for the people saying, hey, go around to the book and bet us because we're playing all 60 minutes. The boys are going. Dallas is coming to town. We'll get them now while we can. And everybody make a little cash on the side. It's so funny because that's the talk in the book. And you know, you did shows out of the book. You go to the book. Like, everybody in the book, like, is he saying to bet the Raiders without saying to bet the Raiders? You just said it, and you're back in New Jersey. Hell yeah.
Saying.
You can't bet the Cowboys in this spot. I don't think
so the answer is I'm not crazy, Dave. Okay, is that what you're saying? And that's what I like to do. I need to consult my consigliere, and you're over here telling me that I might actually be onto something. That's what we give it out to the people. But you just said, is it going to get beyond 7? Because you said people are getting it under 7. I'm seeing it at 7 right now. Are we going to get to 7.5? Would you take it if it did move, or should I just literally in the next commercial break make sure I get it because it's going to continue to move?
Yeah, it ain't going. If it goes to 7.5 at all, if it bounces for a second, somebody comes and buys it. There's no way. A preseason game, I can't remember. I felt uncomfortable going past 6 because of the field goals and the this and that. Too many puntos, my friend. We can't go 7.5. If you're playing, you're only laying. That's the way I would touch this game. I would not. And I would expect points. Time I'm leaning under in games. This feels like an over. I think we might see just a little more pace from both guys, trying to get more plays and more reps to have everything on tape. Say, look, we played that game at home. I should be the starter. Both guys should say that after the game.
Okay, interesting. I think they had it as a total in this game is a fairly high one for the preseason as well. And I believe 39.5, they just said. Do we have team totals? Maybe I could take a Vegas team total in this one because I do believe.
For everybody. What are you making me put up preseason team totals for? Please don't make the odds makers do that. We're just getting ready for the season.
I'm looking for a smorgasbord of options. If I can find a good number, I'm going to take it wherever I can. But I'm very glad that I checked in with my consigliere, and he tells me that that is a way to go. Real quick, on the way out, you see anything in Major League Baseball. 11-3 Phillies, 2-2 Twins, Rangers in the bottom third, still 5-1 Baltimore. What do you think? Anything in Major League Baseball, real quick?
We got to get that over 14.5. We had mentioned that in the Phillies and Nationals. The Orioles, I hope you get your total over, but the pregame total was 8.5. We could get it under. For me, you win, I win, everybody wins. See something, say something. You and Wetzel take it home, baby. I'm out of here.
Solidarity, my friend. I will talk to you soon, and we will be back. Hour number 2 of IGL Prime Time after this.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight. Only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, Prime Time, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, everybody? InGame Live, Prime Time continues. Hour number 2 here. When the games are live, so are we. I am still your host, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, and we bring in our guy to join us here for hour number 2. Dave is out, but my man Scott Wetzel is in. How are you doing, my man? Light night. We only got 3 games on Major League Baseball. We've got a preseason game going on right now with New England and Philly. I wanted to ask you, what are you thinking about your Bo Sox recently? They're in Camden Yards. They're trying to rally in the 9th inning, but they are down 5-1. Do you like anything on the baseball board? I guess there is still Minnesota, Texas, knotted at 2 in the bottom of the 3rd. You seeing anything out there so far, Scott?
Yeah, I did. I did like Texas, Dane. By the way, how's it going? Do appreciate you stepping in here and filling in for Dave. I did like Texas. A little hunch. Cody Bradford's pitched well. Is 4-0. 5 straight wins for the Rangers when he starts, although that dates back. There was one relief appearance in there in which they actually lost, but they've done well enough with him on the mound. Minnesota's not great at home, so I thought a little flyer on the Texas Rangers. 2-2 third inning. He's not exactly pitching the way I'd hope, but I was still like them. Like Philadelphia, and they ended up winning. But before you guys rush to the bank and bet the I was going to say LA Raiders, right, or Oakland Raiders. But before you bet the bank on the Las Vegas Raiders, just know, Dane, since 2013, 7-point preseason favorites or more. While they've won their games for the most part, 9-4 straight up, reverse against the spread though, which is what we all bet, 4-9 against the spread. So it looks sometimes when it looks too obvious, that's when the boys in Vegas, jump up and bite you in the butt. So be careful with Vegas or with the Vegas Raiders laying the 7 points.
Yeah, I mean, they continue to build those buildings in the desert for a reason, Scott.
Yes.
I just do believe that Minshew and AOC, with something to prove, you might get more like regular season play than preseason play. But I digress. We were talking about Major League Baseball.
Is regular season play, though, real quick, is regular season play really that good for the Raiders? No, I mean, it's one thing to be getting that, but it's one thing to get it with the Eagles or the 49ers, right?
We're
Raiders,
talking about Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. I understand that, but I wonder if they keep the O-lineman starters out a little bit longer. I wonder if they allow them to pepper Devontae Adams against third string cornerbacks for a little bit longer. But I digress. We were talking about Major League Baseball, so I want to bring in our next guest right now. It is Josh Ingles from Covers. You see him sometimes here on the grid as well. What is going on, Josh? I want to dive right into it with you because you were talking about some of these futures in the National League, and I want to start in the NL West, which is all of a sudden a little bit tighter than it was a few months ago. I mean, don't look now, but both Arizona and the San Diego Fathers are within like 3 games of the Dodgers. I can't think that the Dodgers will actually cough up this lead. Do you?
I think if you're going the other way, the ship might have sailed on the Friars there, and Arizona, the streak's been long. Everyone kind of knows about it now, but I mean, you're also paying the tax always on the Dodgers for anything. So even within just a division win, I believe you can get Arizona 6-1, San Diego 5-1. You're looking at 2 games each. I don't obviously love the starting pitching with Arizona. I believe Zach Gallen's kind of beat up, but I mean, the Dodgers, like I said, you're paying the tax on the Dodgers. I didn't love, back-to-back losses, I believe, versus Milwaukee. Maybe that's the way you go. I'm waiting for the lines to open once this late game finishes to see if I can look and get Milwaukee number 1 seed in the NL. I think there's a lot of value there just because of what Philly and what LA are. I know that Yelich is hurt, but with only about 32 games left, maybe they can weather that storm. They got Devin Williams back. Could be exciting. I think there's value in the number 1 seed with everything very tight. And the book's obviously pricing Philadelphia and LA too tightly.
You know what's amazing, Josh, is that you're really not getting that much more for either San Diego or Arizona to win the National League. You said they're 5 and 6-1 to win the division. We've seen so many wild card teams now get to the World Series that for them to win the National League is only 8-1 and 9-1, 9.5 to 1, 8.5 to 1. So I don't know. Is it worth betting them to win the whole National League versus the division?
I think it's almost better to fade the top guys just in general and pick up some shrapnel around the outside at some bigger odds, because you got Philly to lead, you got LA there, and you got Milwaukee, obviously the 3 division winners, but you're talking about like a game and a half between the 3 of them. One of those guys could finish in the 3 spot. Like LA could finish in the 3 spot if Milwaukee goes on a run here. All of a sudden, they're playing a 3 spot. Maybe they have to play Atlanta or someone. I mean, I don't love Atlanta, but in a 3-game, a best of 3, probably not someone you want to see. I really like the spot where one of these big teams could go out in that wild card round in best of 3, and there's a lot of value. Like, you're looking at the AL and you're like, okay, I kind of see how things are shaping up here. I don't love Boston getting in. I kind of like KC to get that last spot. I also don't love Minnesota. I think they're someone you probably shouldn't be backing. But on the NL side, I think there's way more value in those bottom brands. And I think, like I said, pricing Philly too high, pricing the Dodgers too high. And honestly, the Braves could if they didn't get in, would you really be surprised if maybe the Mets or maybe even a dark horse like San Francisco snuck in there?
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. The coastal elitism here in Major League Baseball. You're talking about it in the NL Central. I refer you to the AL Central as well, where the Guardians have the best record in the American League, and they are the 4th choice to win the AL pennant behind the Yankees, behind the O's, behind the Houston Astros. And if you're not betting Kansas City, if you're not betting Minnesota, you got to feel good about Cleveland. And to me, honestly, Josh, they're the kind of team that I think plays in the playoffs. They are a contact-based team, right? they have a little bit of a power surge this year if you believe in the renovations and the construction over in the offseason in that stadium.
And the jet stream in right field.
Yeah, absolutely. The win streak, it is absolutely a real thing. Just look at some of these home run totals on some of the Guardians. But I ask you, would you apply the same thing that you just talked about with Milwaukee over in the American League with the Guardians?
I was on the Guardians last year. I was let down, obviously, but like they were not priced very well last year, especially late. And you have to assume that the books have kind of, I don't know, disrespected them all year. I believe going into the All-Star break, if you were looking at number 1 seeds, I think they were still like the number 4 choice behind the Yankees, behind Baltimore, maybe the third choice in that spot, but I think they were still 6-1. So they've just kind of hummed along. But I think when you're kind of looking at the layout and the blueprint of what they are, you're kind of just looking at a starting pitching rotation that you just don't really love with those names. But I mean, we're 110 games into the season, 115 games. You kind of have to say maybe that's a decent enough sample size. And then obviously they can get away by being maybe a well-managed team with that bullpen in the playoffs. I mean, I wouldn't want to face Norris. I wouldn't want to face J-Ram there going lefty righty, and then all those left-handed hitters at Progressive. So I've stayed off them, but I've been watching them from afar, knowing that the books have been disrespecting them. And I still think if you want to buy them, I still think they're one of the top 3 teams in the AL for sure.
Josh, 8 teams within 3 games of each other for the best record in baseball. How important do you think that'll be for those clubs down the stretch?
I think just getting 1 or 2 obviously is important. I don't think number 1 is that great. So let's say you finish number 1, you get your bye. All of a sudden you're facing maybe Kansas City or you're facing Baltimore. I think there's really no good side to 1 or 2. Just get your bye. But at the same point, you're still talking to those same teams on both sides. You got obviously the Yankees and you got Baltimore that's just so priced into the number 1 seed that all those other guys, Cleveland. I got Houston shares a long time ago. Obviously, they've fallen off. I got some KC shares at the All-Star break. They came out, had a tough series versus Boston, so that's kind of fallen off. But you're still only looking at 6 games from KC, from the final wild card to the top in Cleveland. Obviously, that's a lot of ground, and we're looking at 33 games. But 33 games, they're still looking at about 20% of the schedule. So if there's some spots, because I think everything's kind of overpriced, I do like some of those lower teams. Milwaukee, maybe a long shot on Kansas City to kind of wrap up that number 1 seed. Not wrap it up, but maybe get value in that number 1 seed.
Thanks a lot, Josh.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. That's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving not just 1 or 2 points. This is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
But if you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in, everybody. In-game live, prime time rolls on. This fitness statistician Dane Martinez with my guy Scott Wetzel for the next hour here on the grid. I have an update for you, Scott. The Eagles have kicked a field goal. So now with 13 minutes left to go in that standalone preseason game right now, New England 10, Philadelphia 6 in that one. 13 minutes left to go in this one. There was a opening line on 3 on the number. New England was actually favored at home. The live total is now down to 22.5. It started in the mid-30s. Scott, you talk about kind of never really going, laying a full touchdown in the preseason. The other thing that I tend to do in the preseason is bet unders on the game, right? Because I'm thinking that it's not the players, and I said this to Dave before, those third string guys, those guys that are looking to make the 53-man, they are going balls to the wall. They are obviously trying, but it's the coaches that are not necessarily trying, right? You're not going to see cornerback blitzes. You're not going to see disguised coverages. You're not going to see the back pages of the playbook because these guys aren't trying to show anything. And then when we get to this stage of the game, the fourth quarter, these teams are going to probably just keep the clock running as much as possible. We're not going to see an authentic 2-minute offense or anything. So I agree with you on only betting the dogs or nothing. And I'm also leaning to the under in a bunch of these games. It went 12-4, I believe, in week 1. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, 12-4 under, and then the underdogs went 10-6 against the spread as well. So I don't know how Philadelphia, was the favorite to start this week, and then it flipped to New England because the Philadelphia announced that the Stars weren't going to play. Okay, right. I'll buy that, Dave, but I don't get this thing opened up in the mid-30s or like low 30s, as you said, then shot up to like 35.5, 36. And I'm like, who is betting the over in a New England Patriots game? I mean, did they watch them last year? Did they watch them last week? I mean, so then when I put it in, naturally it was only down to 34. So the smart bettors have bet it down to below that 35, which is kind of a little magical number because that's, 5 touchdowns. 5 times 7 is 35. So if it's 35.5, you need 5 touchdowns plus, right? So, but I don't know. I'm going to be betting New England under all year long. I mean, we haven't seen anything out of this offense so far in almost 2 preseason games that makes you think they're going to get in very many shootouts. Their defense is pretty good, and their offense looks like it's going to stink like last year. So, yeah, that's the consensus. You might not bet every single under or every single underdog, but when I look at games, I look for under opportunities. I look for underdog opportunities, and those are the ones I generally bet.
Yeah, so Scott, just, I agree with you when it comes to the New England Patriots and their promise for this season. I mentioned it to Dave in hour 1. Let me bounce it off you as well. If you see the New England Patriots, their win total is 5.5, Scott. Here's the other piece of information I want to give you. They are dogs in all 17 of their games this season. The books release lines for, every game of the NFL season, even the ones in the future. Week 12, week 13, it doesn't matter. There are lines out there for them. And the Patriots are going to be dogs in all 17 of their games. So what that means to me, Wetzel, is for you to lose an under bet on the New England Patriots, they have to have 6 upset victories this season. And quite frankly, I don't think that's going to happen. What's the lowest you've ever seen a season win total? I was asking Dave, and he said that they used to do adjusted ones at the beginning of the season. And once he got as low as, I think, 1.5 or 2.5, people bet it, and it clearly went over, right? So what do you think about that? I don't think they're going to have 6 upset wins. To me, this is a value because the books kind of can't go as low as I think they probably should on New England or maybe like on a Carolina because you just can't hang it that low. But I don't think New England's going to win 6 games this year.
Yeah, you look at it this way, Dane. You say, first off, is New England going to win any road game? Is that team talented enough to not only win a game but win on the road? Probably not, right? So now you say, okay, now they got 8 home games. In order for them to get 6 wins for their total, they would have to go 6-2 at home. Are they, they got Miami at home. They got Houston at home. They got Jacksonville in a neutral site game. They got the Rams. They got the Chargers at home. And then obviously all the division games. I mean, are they really going to go 6-2? Maybe they sneak one road win out, right? They won at Denver last year, so maybe they get one. You would still have to go 5-3 at home. That's not a 5-3 team. And I like the Patriots maybe a little bit more than most. I don't think they're going to be like atrocious, but I don't see the 6 wins. I mean, 4.5 would make me think, okay, maybe they'll get to 5-12, right? But 6-11, boy, not for what we saw last year and not for what we've seen so far this preseason. I don't know when they're going to make the switch from Jacoby Brissett, right? He figures to get the start. If they, their opening season schedule, get a load of this: at Cincinnati, Seattle, okay at home, at the Jets, at San Francisco, Miami, and Houston. Now, are they going to get one win? I mean, somewhere along the line, they're going to say the season's done. Let's put in Drake May, right? Let's not. We don't want May to have that little gauntlet, but I'm thinking after that that Houston game, maybe that's when they'll bring in Drake May. But and once you do that, then what are you going to get? A couple of wins if you're lucky. So. Yeah, you can bet adjusted line. You can. If FanDuel and the other books do offer 4.5 or 3.5 at plus odd, you can definitely do that. I don't know if I'd go much lower than. I might go 3.5. 3-14.
I think that's more in the cards.
Yeah.
Like whatever team winds up with the number 1 overall draft pick is going to go 2-15. It's going to go 3-15 or 3-14. Right. And I actually believe that New England, I don't know, maybe Carolina, maybe a Denver, maybe the New York Football Giants. These are the teams, in my opinion, at least, that are in contention to be the worst in the league. So I do agree with you. I do think it's interesting. And to your point, once they are out of contention, they will likely pass the torch over to Drake May just to get a look on him, right? Just to see what they have, give him some live opportunities, and then we'll see how that goes. And that may not go so well either. When we come back on the other side, Scott, I have been dying to ask you, because I know you have, I know the way you think about some coaches. And some coaches' intelligence and some coaches' ability to manage the game properly and do the right thing. And I really want to have a conversation with you about what is going to happen with a specific play in the NFL that will be new this season. And to give you a little bit of the tease, after the Eagles kicked the field goal, the New England Patriots returned the kickoff to the Philadelphia 45. So I want to talk to you about these kickoff rules, and I want to talk to you about if some teams are going to figure it out ahead of others, and if that can create an advantage for some smart run teams, some teams that maybe know how to play it. We will talk about that with Scott Wetzel next as In-Game Live Prime Time rolls on. Dane and Scott here on the grid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Nobody's ever, in the real world, the Falcons want to kick the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. That's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving not just 1 or 2 points. This is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
But if you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in, everybody. In-game live, prime time rolls on. Dane Martinez and Scott Wetzel. The Patriots have a 4th and 3 on the Philadelphia side of the field, on the Philadelphia 26. So I think we are lining up here for about a 43-yard field goal. That would make it a 7-point game. If it is good, I'll let you know with about 10 minutes left to go. And then, Scott, we may get another kickoff. And that's the play I am asking you about. Have you seen these rules? Even the officials don't even truly understand them just yet, if you saw that from last year, right? But we are going to have some times where teams start on the 40, sometimes on the 30. And I also think there's going to be different teams, Scott, good maybe run scheme teams might be able to cook something up here because you have all the guys right there. It's almost like a scrimmage play based on these guys at the line. I could see some kind of intriguing plays that almost look like design run plays happen. And then on the other side, I think there's going to be some teams and some coaches that just get the strategy wrong, and don't know if they should kick it into the landing zone or just give it up at the 30. What is your thoughts about the kickoff and how it's going to play out this season?
Yeah, I didn't think it was needed, first off, Dane. And listen, maybe the networks do a pretty good job of hiding injuries on kickoffs, but I don't remember seeing that many injuries, certainly not any more than what we normally see during the course of a play from scrimmage. But maybe they hid that to the point where we didn't see it. So let's just go into the assumption, okay, that they need it. It's not bad. It's a series of checks and balances, right? So the big thing is you have the guys all lining up, and if you break that initial wave, it's almost like a goal line situation, when you're backed up into your own end zone, right? If you break that initial wave, there's no secondary back there to stop you. You're going to run for 95 yards, and same thing with a kickoff. So I think what's going to happen is the better teams with the better kickers are going to pick a side. They're going to tell their kicker, all right, either kick to the left or kick to the right. If you kick to the left, the guy on the right, the wing guy, you're going to have to come back and not really go stay in your lane. You're going to have to peel back just in case they break through. Then the next series will be, the offensive team's going to see that and say, all right, guys, you know what? If they kick the ball to the left, now we're going to run a reverse. Joe
right.
Schmo, you catch the ball, and now, Billy Bob, you're going to get the ball on a reverse because that whole right side's going to be wide open. So it is kind of fascinating from that standpoint. I just didn't think it was needed. I think that they really kind of covered the bases. If you kick the ball out of bounds now you're going to get the ball at the 40. You certainly don't want to do that. You kick the ball deep into the end zone, you can't return it. I don't like that rule, but overall, I'm actually okay with that. I've seen enough in the preseason that ultimately that Patriot one that you mentioned, that was like the first one I saw where they actually broke through. All the others I've seen is basically been to between the 25 and 30-yard line.
Yeah, as you know, though, in the preseason, these teams, they're not going to show what they're cooking up in the lab.
Right.
You know what I mean, Scott, right?
Right.
Like, I bet, I look at teams like San Fran, like Baltimore, who have great run schemes. You know what I mean? And I wonder personnel-wise, honestly, because these guys, it's not like these guys are getting the head start. It's not like these guys are going to be able to juke the wedge like you used to be able to. I wonder if teams are going to, line up with an unbalanced line and put 4 offensive linemen on one side and kind of run to that side like you're talking about. I think there is going to be some interesting things. We're seeing it right now. The Philadelphia Eagles, though, the guy slipped and fall. I wonder if, to your point, reverses, double team blocks, actual zone schemes are going to happen because when you don't have the guys running, these guys, it looks almost like a scrimmage play. You know what I mean, Scott? And because these guys are lined up, maybe you can do something and then, boom, you break one, you could be to the house. I'm going to be very intrigued on how teams kind of strategize for this in late game situations when, like you said, if the kicker messes up, you start not at the 20, not at the 30, but at the 40 at times. And there's going to be some interesting late game situations here and decide what do they do. The other thing, Scott, is you can't squib kick it anymore, right? Because it has to at least get to the 20-yard line for the landing zone. I saw a team try to squib and it didn't work. And their team, the opponents got it on the 40. So all sorts of wrinkles to iron out here still. But I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and no onside kicks. I don't like that. I really don't like that. You can only do it in the fourth quarter, and you got to tell the world you're going to do an onside kick. That to me is like the biggest
element of surprise.
That you just wiped out the onside kick, which I understand doesn't happen that often. But you know what? It's still there. So the other thing someone suggested, Dane, is that now that the ball's going to be at the 30 and maybe in some cases the 40, do you inch towards the over a little bit more? Because now you got 5 less yards to get at the field goal range.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. And here's the thing, because it is new, we don't know how to handle it yet, right? Because what you just said, maybe we are leaning to the over. What do you do in an overtime situation in this kind of thing as well? So many questions to consider. So when we come back, we're going to look at the end of this game. It is a one-possession game. We'll check back in on the 2 games still going on in Major League Baseball as well and see if we can find any live edges. That's what we do here on InGame Live, PrimeTime.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, PrimeTime, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, everybody? In-game live, prime time rolls on. Dane Martinez and Scott Wetzel here. Scott, we've talking about the NFL game, which right now is still 13-6 New England. We'll see what happens. There was a muffed punt right there, so the Pats will start deep in their own territory. But there is one game left in Major League Baseball. We've got the Twins and the Rangers tied at 6. They're in the bottom of the 5th, and I bring that up because I always like this point of the game, right? 5th, 6th inning, when the pitchers are maybe going through the order for the 3rd time, runs seem to be scored. And I'll tell you right now, Bailey Ober has 79 pitches already through 5 innings. And on the other side, we've got Bradford. He's got 75 pitches with 5 innings pitched as well. So we are going to start to get to the bullpen. I see a 2-2 game with a live total of 7.5. plus money to the over. You got any thoughts on this one? It's tied at 2, pretty much minus 113 on both sides, and 7.5 is a live total.
Yeah, did like the Bradford pitching K prop, but that probably is not going to hit. It was only 4.5, but he's only has 5 innings, so both pitchers are probably not going to get it right. One guy, as you said, with 79 pitches, the other guy with 75. Yeah, so neither one are going to really come big. Well, Ober's got 3, but maybe if he strikes out the side, he's probably got one more inning with 79 pitches. So still like Texas. It was based on Bradford pitching well, which in the end he actually did. He gave up 2 quick runs. But other than that, he's been okay. You probably get another inning or so out of him. So you get Texas at home, the better home team than Minnesota is on the road. But a lot of key series here, right? In August, you're going to get a bunch of them, including the Red Sox and Orioles, which the Orioles obviously won. But you want to give me Texas, minus 113. Basically, pick them. I think they, as the home team, I think they get the win.
All right, fair enough. Listen, we've got this one NFL game going on. Pats have a 3rd and 10 right now, deep in their own territory. If they have to punt it back to Philadelphia, they may have their best shot at a drive to try to tie this up, and they will get to 4th down. It's going to be about 4th and 4. New England will be on their own 20, 25-yard line, so Philadelphia should get decent field position and maybe have their best shot with about 8 minutes left to go to tie that game up. I want to ask you about a team that will be in the next preseason game. The Atlanta Falcons are at the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, Baltimore, they win most of their preseason games, but Scott, the Atlanta Falcons intrigue me this season. They sure do. So the connection to New England, if you didn't know, is the New England Patriots have traded their stud pass rusher, Matthew Judon, to the Atlanta Falcons for a 3rd-round pick. And then today, Scott, the Atlanta Falcons doubled down on, quote-unquote, going for it. They signed who I think was the biggest get still left in this offseason, the safety that used to be in Denver, Justin Simmons. So now, literally in the last 24 hours, the Falcons have added 2 legitimate Pro Bowl caliber defenders. You know what they're doing on offense, bringing in Kirk Cousins, releasing themselves of the Arthur Smith mindset that was in the last millennium. And quite frankly, Scott, the path to the playoffs is win your division. The NFC South is the weakest division in football, in my opinion, and I think the Falcons are deserving favorites there. I'm intrigued by Atlanta. I think there's a path, if everything comes together, for Atlanta to be semi-dangerous. What do you think about them, especially with their recent additions on the defensive side of the ball?
It helps. Do these 2 moves? Now, we're assuming that Judon is going to show up. I missed it today.
That's fair.
Last I heard, as of this afternoon, he had not shown up for his physical, Dane, which means he's technically not traded yet because, as all these trades now are, it's all pending his physical. So the thinking is that if he doesn't get the physical, if he doesn't get a contract extension, he's not going to show up for the physical. And if he doesn't show up for the physical, then the trade's going to be wiped out the board. So he still holds the hammer in this stuff, wanting a new contract. Yeah. So let's assume that the Falcons made the deal thinking that they're going to give him the money he wants. Do these 2 moves wipe out the drafting of the quarterback at a Washington versus drafting a defensive guy like most people thought they would, or another offensive weapon, because they took a whole lot of criticism for drafting Michael Penix, right? So why are you doing that? And I'm right there with him. I still think it was a dumb move, and I love Penix. But if you invested in Kirk Cousins like you did, right, why would you do that? So this kind of offsets that a little bit. I like the Falcons, but it's still, we're making Kirk Cousins out to be the greatest thing in the world. And I don't see any Super Bowl rings. I don't see any Super Bowl appearances. I don't see any conference championship games on his resume. So to me, and they chose, and God bless them, they used to do play-by-play when he was at Hofstra. So I'm rooting for Raheem Morris. He's my guy. But they chose Raheem Morris over Bill Belichick. So I don't know if the Falcons really know what they're doing. So I'm going to stay on the negative side until I see some positive stuff.
All right, that's fair. By the way, the Eagles are around midfield here in their attempt to try to tie this game up. To answer your question that you had back to me, yes, because most people did think that Atlanta, with that, I think, 9th or 10th pick overall this season, was going to, in fact, draft one of the top pass rushers. I think Turner was the guy that a lot of people had slated to them. And yes, I believe getting Matthew Judon to be your pass rusher, does erase kind of not getting the pass rusher in the draft. And then I think Simmons is a really good piece for the back end. That Falcons pass defense was not necessarily the best. I think the biggest thing is having Robinson as the OC and Raheem Morris, to your point, as the head coach. Listen, they had invested, forget about the Penix pick. In the last 3 years, they had invested in Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts as skill position players, and they didn't really use them, you know? London and Pitts, I've always said, were kind of like sports cars in a garage. And while Kirk Cousins is not, you know, doesn't have all the pelts on the wall like you are talking about, he does have 7 4,000-yard seasons on his resume, right? And I think he does have weapons at his disposal. I just saw when the guys put up a graphic that the Falcons win total is 9.5. I think they can get over that. I think they are now the class of the NFC South. And here's what I'd ask you. Do you think Cousins is the best quarterback in that division when you have Baker Mayfield, when you have Carr, and you have the struggling potential quote-unquote bust of Bryce Young in Carolina? I think he's the most established, accomplished. I am actually a bigger believer in Baker than most people, but I think they have the best quarterback. I think they have the best skill position players. And quite frankly, I think they're going to go over their win total and get a home playoff game.
It's a battle of mediocrity in that division again, but it's taken a step up. Like last year, it was a battle of atrocious teams, right? Who was going to emerge, and you had Tampa Bay do that. And even 2 years ago, when Tampa Bay won the division with a 7-9 record or whatever it was, 7-9, yeah, or 8-9, it was battle of bad teams. This year, at least, the teams are actually halfway decent. I bought into to the Saints last year with Derek Carr. Okay. I really did. I was so disappointed in that. I'm not going to do it again, so I'm going to say yes. Kirk Cousins probably is the best out of those four. I would agree. And I think on paper, it probably is Atlanta. That Saints defense still impresses me. Tough schedule for the Falcons to open up. Pittsburgh, at Philadelphia, Kansas City. I mean, they can very easily be 0-3. People calling for Kirk Cousins' head, right? This thing could get real ugly if they don't find a way to get a couple of wins, the first 4 or 5 weeks of this regular season with all the controversy already around them. But they should win that division, yes.
All right, fair enough. And the Philadelphia Eagles should get into the end zone. It is 2nd and goal on the New England 1-yard line. It is 13-6 right now, 4:51 left to go. Our producer in the back is biting his nails because he thought he had a safe under. But if the Philadelphia Eagles get in here, we could be tied at 13. That would be 36 with still 4 or 5 minutes left to go.
They
so
go
we'll
for
see what happens here. I don't know, but there's no overtime, right, anymore.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. I don't think they would have to go for 2. Coaches make that kind of wink, wink, nod, nod to not have to have overtime, right, and would go for 2 maybe in that other situation. But we're going to find out because the Philadelphia Eagles have punched it into the end zone. So we are now at 13-12, and with an extra point or a 2-point conversion pending, we'll see what happens here. I mean, you still got to practice your 2-point conversions, right, Scott? Like you got to try some of those plays. So we've got a very interesting decision to make for Philadelphia, and it does look like they are going for 2. And I love this as someone who's holding Philadelphia +3 because if they tied it up, then that field goal right now, however, New England maintaining a 1-point lead, maybe they just parked the bus. So we'll see what happens. We'll let you know, and we'll ask Cam Stewart his thoughts when we come back.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Like nobody's ever, like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
If you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in, everybody. In-game live, prime time rolls on. Dane Martinez and Scott Wetzel letting you guys know the Eagles did, in fact, go for 2, and they converted. So it is now 14-13. The Patriots will have what is probably one last drive to try to get a game-winning field goal or even get themselves into the end zone. 4 minutes left to go, but they got sacked on first down. It is now 2nd and 17 deep in their own territory. We'll put a pin in on that and welcome in our guy, the raging redhead Cam Stewart, who joins us now. You see him all over the place. I have been excited to ask you a question here, Cam, and it's an authentic question. I'm honestly wondering about this because over in the PGA Tour, my friend, we start the FedEx playoffs this week, right, with the St. Jude. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I have this right. But every week now in the playoffs, you just trim the field, right? And it goes from like the top, 50 to the top 30. And then in the final event, you know, somebody starts at like -6 already or whatever it is. My question for you is this. Is there edges, are there values that you can find with guys that maybe are 20, let's say it's the top 30, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like that are right around the cut line that only have to not necessarily try to win the tournament, but instead just try to finish in a certain place that keeps them inside the top 30 or so they qualify for next week. You know what I mean? I'm always interested. It's the same thing in like the second leg of a home and home in soccer. You know what I mean? Where like you don't actually have to win to actually move on and get on. Exactly. So tell me, am I crazy here? Are there kind of elements of that in these FedEx Cup tournaments, and are there any golfers that are right around the cut line that we need to know about?
No, definitely, Dane. It's a real hard question because it leads into a lot of different things. So this week we start at 70 and it gets whittled down to 50, and Tour Championship at East Lake outside of Atlanta is 30. So yes, like some of these guys are totally safe, like in the FedEx guys, like obviously Scheffler, Schauffele, all those guys. But you're right. Like you look at guys who are like basically, 62nd or something like that. They have to make a move. They have to make a move this week to get there. Let's remember one thing. The new format, it's almost impossible to bet against Scheffler or Schauffele to win the FedEx Cup because of their seasons. But I will say this. Crazy things have happened before. Bill Haas started like in the 7th position. He won at like 500-1. Crazy things have happened in the past. Lucas Glover. You don't see it very often. Usually the favorites like Rory win. He was always on top of the money list. But you're right. If you have a good number, you're not going to take too many chances in the tournament. And by the way, you'd start playing for pars rather than birdies. But looking at this leaderboard right now, Dane, and you can take a flyer, though, to win FedEx Cup, but I wouldn't go too far outside probably the top 8, because at the end, you talked about the tournament. Scotty Scheffler is going to start at -10, regardless, unless Xander Schauffele wins the next couple. You know what I mean? So, and then it goes basically to all the guys down to even. You're starting a tournament 10 strokes back. You could make up the ground, but if you do, Dane, that's why they're offering guys at 500-1, 300-1. Back in the old days, it was kind of like safety in the Super Bowl. They didn't even know what to do with it. And they I know guys that bought houses after Seattle sacked Denver in that Super Bowl game. And next thing you know, they're up like $176,000. Now the book's kind of limited, but here's the deal.
out of all these guys, Scheffler, I don't know how he's going to be stopped. Him and Schauffele came out hot today. They were playing with each other and just kind of ran out of juice. My live bet for this, you're getting a great number on Morikawa. He shot 2 under. Is he ever going to break through the door? I'm not sure about Chris Kirk. By the way, shout out to my boy Carver High. What a hit at 90-1 for first round leader. Like, I put a couple bucks on it, Wetzel. You should start listening to Carver, not me. I had a couple guys, but not like that one. But anyway, looking at the leaderboard, a lot of people like Justin Thomas this week. He could have got a better number at the start. So if I'm going to look at a couple guys, Dane and Scott live, I would look at Morikawa at 22. I'm not sure how Hideki's going to go. I'm actually really impressed, Dane. I'm not sure if you heard the story. Hideki Matsuyama and his staff, they went to the Olympics and their passports they got robbed and their passports got stolen and stuff. Not Hideki, but his caddy and his team. Like, obviously Hideki had double safes, I guess. Lots of yen in there, but he's okay. But he hired another caddy. He hired Hitsatuni's caddy, who just didn't get in. Another Japanese player just missed outside the top 70, so he got him in there and a couple other dudes from his consortium. So anyway, what a start for Hideki. No regular caddy, no nothing. Shows you he's a pro. Plus 750. But if I were to look at guys right now, Fleetwood is a dangerous player. Can he close? He's been very close at 14. And my favorite bet on the board there is Morikawa at 22. He started the tournament at 12, and he's only a few shots back. I don't expect Chris Kirk to go wire to wire. Good call by Carver. He's kind of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday guy. He has won in the past before, but in this field with this pedigree, and Justin Thomas, Dane, to your point, he's a guy that really has to make a move. He's watching his buddies, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's sitting there going,
get along, gang.
Yeah. That's the thing. Jordan Spieth even played well today. He's another guy that has to have a strong finish to get things done. So those are guys to look out for. By the way, Dane, I just want to say on the network tomorrow, Sports Rage, we're only on from 10 Eastern to midnight because we have Live Golf from the Greenbrier in West Virginia, where Phil's got property, Bubba Watson, a couple other things. He adopted some goats. I used to own the General Lee, but a couple picks for you there. Bryson DeChambeau is everyone's favorite at plus 650. I like another guy at 8-1 I found, Joaquin Niemann. And if you're looking for a couple dogs, I really, really like my favorite play, Matt Wolff. I got him at 29. This guy was basically blacklisted and outed by Brooks Koepka picks on everybody. He's like the bully, like Nelson Muntz in the schoolyard on The Simpsons. And after a while, he's like, Wolf's like, I don't need this crap. I'm just going to join another team on Live. Since then, his last 4 performances, all inside top 16. This is a bomber's paradise. Who hits the ball the biggest, other than Bryson DeChambeau? Matthew Wolff. Give me 29 who's with the Wolfman, baby. Wolfman Jack. Watch out for him this week. This could be the breakthrough week, and I'm going to be on it. So we got Live Golf on the network, and bring it home, Dane. Bring it home, buddy. Just like at Saratoga. Big. Let's blow it up.
Do you find, Cam, the LIV easier to bet because there's less, really, really good golfers on that tour?
Yes, and another guy. Some guys have already checked out. They got guaranteed money. It's like a player in the NFL. There's Pat Perez is there for the party on the plane and the caviar. Soon the sheiks are going to go, dude, you better finish inside the top 10 a couple times, or we're going to find another guy after this contract's done. Certain guys have a competitive edge, and other guys play for money, and you can find it on the Live, and there's less guys per tournament too. So yes, Brady's hit 4. Brady Cannon has hit 4 in a row. Me and Carver, we hit one the other week on the Live. It's way easier than the PGA Tour. Less players and more obvious.
Thanks a lot, Cam. As always, I say, what's up to Cam? And then I say, we'll be back to finish the segment. Cam takes it on.
I haven't even got to the CFL live bet. I talk too much.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
These preseason games often just come down to a team will get inside the 5-yard line and they go for it. Nobody's ever Like in the real world, the Falcons would have kicked the field goal.
And hit this thing right down to the middle. We talk about these games being close, decided, maybe a tie. Like that's the whole thing. You talked about it, Merrill. These lines are moving like not just 1 or 2 points. Like this is significant stuff.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
It feels like everybody's running to Houston, and that worries me a lot. The expectations for this Texans team, given where they were a couple of years ago, is kind of scary, is it not?
I was at least looking for a number. I think the best one I found was plus 850. And then Super Bowl-wise, I think it was 16-1. I think if they make it, they would probably be the favorites.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
4% is 4%. It's hard enough to get a win, let alone you take it. So if you make a $100 bet and you win, they want to give you $96.
And if you continue to say that we're going to be at a 15% tax rate and then double it or almost triple it in states like they did with Illinois, went from 15 to 40, we're going to pass it on to the consumer in the form of a surcharge.
InGame Live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, everybody? In-game live prime time wrapping up here on a Thursday night. Dane Martinez and Scott Wetzel. Scott, New England is going to have one more chance. We are at the 2-minute warning in this game. New England has the ball, starting a drive on their own 33-yard line, and it looks like Bailey Zappi is coming in, trying to lead that one. If you are Zappi and you know it, clap your hands. What do you think happens here in the last drive? Patriots plus 140 to come back and win. But honestly, they're what, 3 first downs away from maybe getting a field goal attempt to win this one? What do you say? Plus 140 on the Pats on the money line on the way out?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not in big on laying minus 180, but I don't think they get in field goal range. You know, you realistically, what, say maybe a 60-yarder, 55, 60-yarder. So you need a good, you said it, three first downs. They didn't get anything in their last drive. They did just pick up one there. They got 2 timeouts left, so they're going to have some time. But, it's Bailey Zappi. What are the Patriots doing? Again, I mentioned this last week, Dane. I mean, you want Drake May to ultimately be your starting quarterback, right? So do you give him an opportunity here, the final drive? No. All right, so Jacoby Brissett's going to be your starting quarterback to start the season. Do you give him the opportunity here, final drive? No. You give it to Bailey Zappi. I mean, what are you accomplishing, even if they move down the field and kick the game-winning field goal? I mean, you know what you have in Bailey Zappi. I'd just be happy with Joe Milton. If you're not going to put anyone in there, then put Milton in there. So, I think the Patriots don't get the yardage, and I think Philadelphia wins. So, give me Philadelphia minus the 180. And it's still 2-2. We're getting close to extra innings with the Rangers and Twinkies. Still 7th inning, but they're giving you 6.5. If you get that to the 8th inning, then you can bet the over 6.5, thinking it's going to go extra innings where most teams score a couple of runs. And then you could be, sitting at a 4-3 final over 6.5.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that over 6.5 because we're at 2-2 right now. If we get to 3-3, we are guaranteed to go over that one. It is heavily juiced. It's at minus 132, and Bailey Zappi standing and delivering from the pocket. They have just picked up one of the, I think, 3 first downs they need. We got the field goal kicker kind of warming up here. This could be a big moment for a field goal kicker. You talk about the opportunity in a last-minute drive. We could have an opportunity here for a game-winning kick. The Patriots are on their own 46-yard line, first down, after only 1 play here. So now, Scott, I don't know, 2 crossing patterns, and they could maybe get this done. Next play, it is incomplete, but they're literally only about 20 yards away from field goal range at this point. So I think it could be interesting. It is going down. It was plus 140. It's now plus 124. It is now locked. I think we might see a long field goal attempt to try to win this game, Scott.
Yeah. If it was a regular season game, I'd be all over the underdog, because you see, I don't know why, Dane. I don't know why. They play great defense the entire second half, right? They don't allow Patriots basically anything except 1 field goal. Last 2 minutes where you need to make 1 stop, and you see it time after time after time. The defense allows these teams to move right down the field at the field goal range. It really is crazy. It really is. My favorite play this weekend, by the way, is,
let me know.
I don't know why the Jets are only a -1.5 point favorite over Carolina. But that Carolina team, I don't think we're going to get Bryce Young. It doesn't matter because he's not any good anyway. The Jet backups played very well. We're not probably going to get Aaron Rodgers, but that's okay. Adrian Martinez and the other kid that played very well last time out. So it's basically pick up -1.5. I like that, and I like the under 38.5 San Fran and the New Orleans Saints. Conference game. What a nice little goofy trend that I actually buy into. Games, Dane, involving conference teams against each other are, let me give it to you here quickly. Here it is. 61 unders, 38 overs, including 5-1 last week.
Right.
Now, there's only two games this week where it's the same conference teams, because I think the boys in Vegas know this and then the NFL knows this. But this is one of them. Give me under 38.5 Saints 49ers.
Fair enough. Maybe those conference teams more likely to probably see each other in the regular season, even less willing to show their hands. And you are absolutely right. The Patriots will not get into field goal range, and I think I smell a cut coming soon because the center had a horrible snap. It went behind Bailey Zappi, and they have turned it over. The Philadelphia Eagles have gotten the ball, and they are kneeling on it. If you see the replay, you'll know, Scott, it was a horrible snap from probably a third-string center, and he may be told to turn in his playbook pretty soon because in that high-leverage situation, it did not matter. But I'm with you, Scott. Let's continue to find opportunities to bet the under in the preseason, and hopefully, Scott, before the regular season starts, I'll have another opportunity to talk with you right here on InGame Live. You have a great rest of the week. You have a great rest of the weekend. And to everybody out there, find the value. If you see something, say something. That's what we do here on the grid. Another edition of InGame Live Primetime in the books for my guy, Scott Wetzel. I'm Dane Martinez, wishing you good luck. Go ahead, click submit. Get that cash.